So Demarcus Cousins' free agency is really interesting to me because if that injury doesn't happen, then safe to say that he'd be sitting on a max contract of 4 or 5 years, whatever it would be. And since that happened, of course, we know how it's played out as he's now with the Warriors and he's not going to be on Golden State next season. The question is, what is DeMarcus Cousins going to get on the open market? Are teams going to be lining up to give him a long contract and eating up 30% of their cap space or whatever it would be for how long he's been in the NBA? Or are teams still going to be a little freaked out by his character, his health? Can he age well? I think we should start with how he's looked for the Warriors so far, with the idea that we still need to see him in the playoffs because teams are going to be attacking him a little bit more in pick and rolls and forcing him to defend in space. But in terms of looking like the old DeMarcus Cousins, I think he's shown some pretty good signs so far with the way he can move on the floor, because that was probably Boogie's best trait when he was healthy, was that the guy could look like a shooting guard in a center's body with the way he could go off the dribble and carry the ball in transition and make passes to guys, whether it's at the top of the key or he's bringing the ball up or on the low post or whatever. Then he could also make jump shots and all that. And the shooting hasn't been going well for him so far with the Warriors. My gut feeling tells me he's going to turn that around. And you have to assume that with the rest of this season and then a whole offseason, perhaps DeMarcus could get back to what he was before. I mean, there's certainly still some hesitancy with that, but so far it's gone pretty okay for the guy. Now, of course, there are still concerns about his character, and we're going to have to wait to see if there's a moment in the playoffs when the Warriors are pushed a little bit more than they expect, and is he going to react well? Is he going to freak out? Is he going to get technical fouls? Is he going to mentally check out of the game? Is he going to hoist up bad shots? We don't really know. He's going to have to prove all that. But if I was a GM, I would still be scared of that stuff, because while I do think DeMarcus has matured a bit as he's aged, it would just be kind of wild if all that was completely gone from his personality, right? So as a result, does that make me a little more weary of offering him a long contract and a whole lot of money? Yeah, but at the same time, with how talented the guy is and the hope that, I should say, with the potential confirmation of how he handles the rest of this Warrior situation, then yeah, I could be swayed to giving the guy money. If we look at just the center market, Nikola Jokic got like 24 to 30 something million a year throughout his entire contract. That's going to be going up. Same thing with Clint Capella. Right now, his contract is $15 million. It's going to end up being about $19 million. And I am not super confident in which way it's going to end up for DeMarcus. I mean, my gut tells me it'd be somewhere in the middle, but at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up with like a 4-year contract of max money, or 5 years or whatever it would be. It would certainly surprise me, because I can't think of a single GM who would feel great about the end of that contract, whatever the money would be. But, it's the NBA, and it's a matter of sometimes you got to overpay and extend the years out a little bit more than you're really comfortable, or you don't get the guy at all. So maybe a team that's a little desperate for a talent upgrade or something else that I can't think of would go for it. So anyway, if we look at some teams, the first team I noticed that has cap space is the Clippers. It seems that they're all in on Kawhi and Kevin Durant, a little bit more towards Kawhi, with them like bringing scouts to Raptors games and weird things like that. The thing with the Clippers is with the way they got out of the Blake Griffin contract, I feel like they might not be all the way in on DeMarcus, because he and Blake are in kind of similar spots where it's like very good big who has done a good job of aging with developing a jump shot and all that, but also has injury history, and DeMarcus Cousins officially has injury history. And they might not be comfortable with having to give that kind of a guy who's in his late 20s a really big contract. Now, maybe if it was a shorter deal, they'd be okay with it, but just with the way Jerry West has operated the past couple of years with this team and getting out of Tobias's money rather than giving him what is probably going to end up being a max contract, they chose to get 2 first-round picks instead. it just doesn't seem like they're the type of front office that wants to commit to Demarcus Cousins like that. What would be crazy is if the Knicks gave Boogie money because maybe they ended up getting Kyrie or Kevin Durant, or maybe they got nobody and they were just like, crap, we have to get someone. But even then, with the Porzingis move, I think this is a Knicks front office headed by Scott Perry that says that they're a little different than previous Knicks regimes, where you could argue that this would be the equivalent of the Amari Stoudemire signing, where it goes really well in the beginning, but when other teams are saying, no, we don't really like the look of that with his health and his weight and his size and all that stuff, and then it ends up costing the Knicks pretty bad, they might just avoid that altogether. Now, again, this is not Amari Stoudemire exactly, so for all we know, Demarcus could end up being 33 years old and still being awesome, but you have to open yourself up to the idea that that is not going to happen. Now, whether this means Boogie gets a shorter contract, it's possible. Whether he's going to want that is a different conversation entirely. If we look at a team like the Nets, I don't think that happens. Dallas is interesting because Mark Cuban may be so star-hungry right now with getting Luka and getting pretty damn reckless with the Porzingis trade, seeing as they took on money and lost draft picks for a guy who's had injury problems. I could kind of picture him losing his mind and going for DeMarcus. I mean, we saw something kind of similar with the Harrison Barnes contract. Not that Harrison Barnes is as good, but they gave a max contract to a guy who was a decent NBA player. And I know the situation is not exactly the same in terms of where we're at in free agency and the expectations of contracts, but I do think that is still in there for Mark Cuban, where he'll roll the dice more than other front offices will. And I do think he trusts the Mavericks training people. I mean, they've done a pretty good job with having JJ Barea not fall off a cliff with how much Rick Carlisle uses him, and he's 34 years old now. Granted, JJ's been a little worse lately, but there were stretches of this year where he was really damn good. Also, the fact that Dirk, at 39 years old last season, was still a pretty decent offensive player. Of course, Mark Cuban prioritizes having state-of-the-art everything, so I think I could picture him being like, I'm going to give this guy his money because, number one, I love star players, and number two, I trust that our training people are going to have him ready to go as we get older. And, I could picture it. There's also a chance that DeMarcus Cousins and Rick Carlisle would cause the world to explode, but Indiana, no, with Miles Turner. The Lakers would be something. I mean, of course, they're hoping for someone, whether it's Kyrie or Kemba Walker or Kawhi or whatever, or Klay Thompson. But maybe they would be so desperate if they didn't get somebody that they would bring DeMarcus Cousins on. And to be fair, if there's anybody who may be able to rein in Boogie's stuff, it could be LeBron. So there's that for you. And after that, it starts to get into teams that would have to shed salary in order to get DeMarcus, so it becomes a little more difficult to figure out where he would actually end up. But yeah, I think I've named a decent amount of teams, and you never really know with this stuff, because anybody could figure out a sign and trade. They could buy out players to get more cap space and all that, and the NBA is as wild as it comes. But Boogie's free agency is very interesting, and I don't know, we just gotta wait pretty much.